All right, so today we're going to be talking about persuasive techniques. Last week we talked about persuasive appeals. We talked about appeals to logic, to emotion, to ethics. And now we're going to talk about just kind of some strategies that people use when being persuasive. Persuasive techniques are also called propaganda techniques. It's more of a negative connotation there when we use the word propaganda. But usually these are an appeal to the audience's emotions or ethics. They will include logical appeals. So, you might see an advertisement that's just like, oh, this cures 75% of skin disease or whatever. And they'll throw stats out there. But again, that's still just a logical appeal. These techniques are like extra strategies that they layer on top of those to try to convince you. Okay? So, they tend to be emotional or ethical. So, here are some techniques that speakers, in this case, we'll use speakers just to refer to the author, the creator of the message, will use to impress. So, we've got loaded words. These carry strong emotional associations. So, for loaded words, we will say things like, our basketball team won the invitational, pulverizing Jarvis High School in the finals. Because they chose that word pulverizing instead of just our basketball team won the invitational, right? No, we beat the other team again, but we're not just saying we beat the other team. We pulverized them. So that is a loaded word. It carries with it a certain weight. Next up, you've got glittering generalities. These are when they use overwhelmingly positive statements that ignore any evidence to the contrary. So, this is when they'll say things like, this is unquestionably the funniest series to ever air on television. Or a lot of times products will say, brand new, new and improved, right? All those are just glittering generalities. They make it sound really nice, but they don't actually have any evidence to prove it, right? Now 10% more effective. What? Well, where are you getting that from? It's like throwing glitter on it. The way I like to describe glittering generalities is that you could sell people a turd if you threw some glitter on it, right? Made it sparkle. Now it looks kind of nice. Okay, next up is awards. Awards are used to give audiences a sense that the product or company is credible and somehow superior. So, the interesting thing about awards is that they can often be like legitimate. It can be a logical award. So when a car company comes out and they say something like, "Oh, this was Motor Trend's SUV of the year," they won that award, and it's a legitimate award. And so they're using a logical appeal, right, to say, "Hey, we actually did get this, and this makes us better because, or we have the highest safety rating, or whatever, right?" So it sets us above the rest. But awards can also be just completely made up. So I think about the movie Elf when Buddy arrives to New York City and he sees world's best coffee. And he's just like, can you believe it? Right? And actually thinks that they have the world's best coffee. No, they just slapped that on there as a fake award to lure in people. Okay, we also have techniques that rely on perceptions of people, how we view people. And actually, the rest of these really kind of deal with how we view people, but these in particular are really trying to get us to react to either who is giving the message, an ethical appeal, or who is receiving the message, which I guess in many ways is still ethical. Okay, so the first of these we have is testimonials. These are endorsements by well known people or by people with whom the audience identifies. So, an example of this would be the former basketball player, Michael Jordan, sells Hanes t-shirts, Hanes underwear, all sorts of Hanes products. He doesn't have any authority to actually sell t-shirts. What makes him a better t-shirt expert than me? I wear t-shirts every day. So it's just the fact that it's Michael Jordan. So we know him. We're gonna trust his product there. It can also be a testimonial, such as like 9 out of 10 dentists prefer Crest. And so the audience, they might not know that dentist is not a well known person, but they identify that they can sell that product. We also have stereotyping. This is an appeal to what they think a certain group, gender role, or culture is like. So choosy moms choose Jif. or anytime they're like, oh, well, we're targeting this mom group and we're going to play up to mom stereotypes to convince them that this is a good product. You're going to see this all the time. Okay, think about like um, Old Spice deodorant, and it's the manly man sense. What makes a real man? What does that have to do with deodorant? Nothing. It's because they're appealing to stereotypes. All right, techniques that appeal to groups. So here you've got bandwagon appeals, which imply that everyone agrees with the writer's opinion, warns the readers or listeners not to be left out by disagreeing or failing to act. So the everybody is doing it mentality. So here's a couple of examples. Clearly, no one opposes recycling, right? Why would you oppose recycling? Everybody supports it, obviously. Or don't be the only one without an iPhone. Or even if it's just like you feel like you're part of a sense of community by buying into this, it's you want to be a part of that. You don't want to be on the outside looking in. That's bandwagon. Next up, we've got an appeal to elegance. This identifies with people considered upper class, money, power, and fame. So one example I always love of this is the Fancy Feast cat food commercials where they've got the little crystal dish, classical music playing in the background. They put this cat food slop in there and then ding 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 ring the dish with a fork or whatever, and the cat comes, you know, trouncing over and delicately eats from its Fancy Feast crystal dish. They're appealing to like an upper classness, and sometimes it's a little bit tongue in cheek like that, where it's kind of poking fun at things. Other times it is very much saying like, actually, look, this watch is really only for the upper class, the elite, and so the association is if I bought that watch, I would join that elite class. Then finally, you've got the appeal to the common man, the average Joe. I know I'm using gender specific terminology there, but that is just the phrase used, right? The common man, average Joe. The best way to think about this is just this appeals to the working class, the average, everyday, usually blue collar worker, farmers and mechanics, and politicians do this all the time where they'll go and they'll speak to the Farmers Union of America or whatever, and they're like, my grandfather before me was a farmer, and my father had a garden in his backyard, and now and the association is I understand you people, you common people, right? Even though I am running for president, I am down to earth. And so they will do things. Maybe they'll wear jeans when they speak to that crowd. Maybe in a farmer's hat, they might change their diction a little bit. But that is an appeal to the common man. My wife likes this YouTube channel, the Bucket List Family, and they're entertaining. Don't get me wrong, but what I can't stand is they are millionaires. Okay, this guy had a tech company that he sold for millions of dollars, and he started the tech company with help from his very rich father, and they travel all over the world doing the most extraordinary, like crazy things, and just fund everything through like this YouTube and basically living off of this money that they sold this company from. But they always say, we're just your average family with a not so average life. And it's like, but you're not your average family. You're appealing to the average family. So that's what the appeal is, but you yourselves are beyond average. Okay, so that covers different types of persuasive techniques. I want to talk about some other persuasive techniques that we should see them for what they are, just like the techniques we talked about. But these are more faulty reasoning. They're fallacies. They're wrong ways of reasoning through something that oftentimes actually works. Okay, and so we've got 5 of them here. The first of these is circular reasoning. Circular reasoning occurs when the reason for an opinion is simply the opinion stated in different words. Audrey Marlowe is the best singer in the world because she's so talented and good at what she does. What are they saying here? They're saying Audrey Marlowe is the best singer in the world because she's the best singer in the world, right? She's a good singer because she's a good singer. An actual argument wouldn't use circular reasoning. It would be Audrey Marlowe is the best singer in the world because every single one of her albums has hit platinum. She can hit the highest of high notes and the lowest of low notes, or whatever. Pick whatever criteria you're using to define best. But you can't just say because she's good at singing. That's circular. Next up is a hasty generalization. This is a statement based on insufficient evidence. So hasty means like it's quick, so you're jumping to conclusions here, and usually illogical conclusions. So here's an example. A student driver struck a post last week. If we allow students to leave campus for lunch, accidents will increase tenfold. Do you see what they did there? One student hit a post. Okay, yeah, that's unfortunate. I once hit a curb when I was learning to drive in high school. Completely just blew my tire out on the high school campus. Did they suspend driving because I was a bad driver? No, right? The conclusion that they've jumped to here is that because of one bad driver, that there's going to be 10 times as many bad drivers if you let students out for lunch. Hasty generalization. There's not enough evidence to prove that. Okay. Next, you have name calling. We talked about this with the Brutus and Mark Antony funeral speeches. It's an ad hominem attack once again. So remember, ad hominem is against human. This is when the speaker, the writer, whoever's creating this message, attacks a person or an organization or whatever, attacks an identity who holds that view rather than the view itself, right? Like once again, politicians do this all the time. I was just watching a Donald Trump press conference where the reporter asked the question and he just responded with, "You're such a bad reporter," right? How can you even ask these types of questions? Instead of answering the question, he attacked the questioner to kind of get away from the argument that was being presented. Okay, so this is a strategy. Here's another example. People who think students should remain on campus for lunch are cowards who hate freedom, right? The one person wants to ban students leaving for lunch. The opposition says, oh, those people are cowards, right? So instead of addressing the issue of whether students should or should not be able to leave for lunch, they attack the people who believe that. Either or reasoning occurs when a writer describes a situation as though there were only two choices, when in fact there may be several options. So it'll say it's either this or it's that. If you love cats, you obviously hate dogs, right? Not leaving room for whether or not you could be both. Okay, obviously that's a very stereotypical example, but that is what either or reasoning ultimately does. And lastly, we've got false cause and effect. So the writer asserts that because one event follows another, the first event must have caused the second. So this is causation without correlation if you're using science terms. But writers use the same false technique. And again, in science, you would just say, oh, that we actually can't buy into that, right? You would use it to refute it. But in persuasion, people actually use it to try to trick people into believing something. So, an example, wearing the new uniforms, our track team lost. Therefore, we must return to wearing the old uniforms immediately. As a Browns fan, I do this all the time. I will wear a shirt, the Browns start losing, I will say, if I had just picked my other Browns shirt, they would be winning right now. Okay, obviously that's superstitious nonsense, but it's still a false cause and effect. I'm attributing the way that my team is playing to what I am wearing. There's a false correlation there. So here is your activity. You just need to find 3 examples from ads from the internet that utilize one of the persuasive techniques or one of the faulty arguments. Okay, no repeats. So if you do a hasty generalization and you do a bandwagon, your third one cannot be hasty generalization or bandwagon. And what I want you to do is I want you to provide a link to the image or the video with a brief explanation, a sentence or two, as to how that advertisement uses that persuasive technique or faulty argument. Please don't use any of the examples I used in this lesson. If you do that, I'll just get back to you and say, hey, that was from the lesson. Can you pick a different one? But I don't care if it's a link. I have had some people turn this in already, and they're actually just copying and pasting the image into the Schoology assignment. That's fine. That makes it real easy for me. I don't have to click as many links. But however you want to convey those to me is fine. You just need to make sure to submit it via the Schoology assignment.